Chairman. Mr. Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome, Mr. Secretary. Sorry to be late to your hearing. But I do want to echo the sentiments of my colleagues and you with respect to the tragedy in Japan. Our thoughts and prayers are with the Japanese people, their leaders, the engineers working around the clock, and all the public and health and safety workers. With the economy still floundering, uncertainty in the Middle East, tragedies in Japan and the Gulf still fresh in our minds, the price at the pump is getting higher every day. Electric bills are on the rise, perhaps now more than ever. And we ought to be focused on a strategy to move the country towards energy independence. I think we can all agree on that general principle. In Kentucky, energy costs, home heating and gas, rival housing for the top line on the family budget. We've got an important responsibility to keep these costs as low as possible because our families are struggling to make ends meet, and also for the business which are creating the jobs. On the one hand, the President's lofty goal of producing 80% of our electricity from so-called clean sources is admirable. On the other, the resources we have readily at our disposal on American soil and immediately offshore are fossil-based. 84% of our energy today is sourced from oil, gas, and coal. 84. We've got 20% of the world's coal reserves at our disposal right now today, and there are some 16 billion barrels of oil ripe for harvest in a 2,000-acre region of Anwar alone. And yet the administration has undertaken a litany of actions that will have a negative impact or even completely stymie domestic energy production. As the Secretary of Energy, you have the very difficult task of reconciling these two realities, shepherding a responsible transition to new, cleaner technologies, and striking an appropriate balance between our short-term needs and our long-term goals. As you know, the 112th Congress has been solely focused so far on reining in out-of-control spending and putting Americans back to work. You rightly quoted Mr. Augustine in saying that underfunding R&D in a time of austerity is like removing the engine of an aircraft to reduce its weight. But these investments must be targeted and reflective of reality. I've always supported an all-of-the-above approach to American energy security that would maintain our stature as a leader in the development of cutting-edge renewable technologies while acknowledging that coal, oil, and nuclear will be a vital part of our portfolio for the foreseeable future. Do you disagree with that last statement?
No, I don't.
Can you speak more about it?
Sure. I think our fossil fuel will be needed in order to go forward. Let me first divide it between transportation sector and the electricity generating sector. I think we are largely dependent on oil for the transportation. Oh, let me also say that I think what the administration, let me back up and say the administration feels that increased production of oil should be part of a long-term strategy. As the President has said, that oil production in 2010 has been at its highest level in the United States since 2003. And so they have released new leases, and we're encouraging the oil companies that are sitting on leases that are not being utilized to do that. So I think we do think that increased oil production should be part of our strategy, that in the short term. In the long term, we need to diversify from our supplies of transportation fuel. And to that end, we see improved efficiency, which Americans are now profiting by in this recent increase in gasoline prices. We see electrification. As I said, I'm very bullish on the remarkable progress that has been made in the state of batteries only in the last few years. And we are now seeing where the cars like the Chevy Volt, as an example, Nissan Leaf, Those batteries they're installing today are being marketed in 2 or 3 years. They'll be putting in better batteries, and we're investing in research, which we hope in 5 years' time, there's a reasonable, good probability that we will be testing those batteries, and by that time it should be 3 times less expensive, 2 or 3 times higher energy density. You can really now think of driving a couple hundred miles in a competitive car.
One of the most important programs in the development of cutting-edge clean energy technology has been the DOE Loan Guarantee Program. I understand that there are several advanced coal technology projects ready to move, but that DOE has been dragging its feet. At the same time, you've been approving renewable and nuclear projects left and right. According to your department's information, you have $3.2 billion in projects that may be finalized this year. Can you tell me why these fossil proposals were not processed at the same rate as the nuclear and the renewable energy projects?
Well, actually, to the best of my knowledge, during the Recovery Act, there was and also in other base funding programs, the so-called CCPI programs, there was a tremendous amount of investment made in the federal government, and I'm glad to note also matched more than 50% by private industry. There's been a retrenchment, at least in one project I know of, Rio Tinto BP, not to go forward, but we are very hopeful that the other projects for carbon capture to develop these clean coal technologies will go forward. And so we are pushing on those as hard as any of the other loan programs.
I really wasn't talking of
or it's not actually a loan program, it's a grant. But
pardon me?
Sorry, there are grants. There's partial grants where we kick in a certain amount of money, and that's matched more than 50% in many cases by.
Yeah, I really wasn't talking about carbon capture. I was talking about energy efficiency.
Oh, okay.
And the ability to produce electricity. You have over $8 billion in authority available for fossil fuel plants. You apparently have enough projects identified to use the entirety of this funding, and yet we don't see them. Can you explain why?
Well, in that loan program, it's like in the nuclear loan program. This is where, depending on the risk of the project, and there has to be what is called a credit subsidy. And in the nuclear loan credit subsidy is effectively like a mortgage insurance. The OMB is the ultimate determination of what that amount is, but essentially if you borrow X amount of dollars, that a certain percentage would have to be paid to the Treasury as a sort of insurance should one default on the loan and there are not enough assets to recover the taxpayer investment. So it's like an insurance policy. In the fossil program, as well as in the nuclear program, the companies have to come up with those subsidies. So there's no taxpayer money. In the renewables, there is an addition that the taxpayers actually pay in. So in those fossil fuel programs, it really depends. It's a financial decision on the part of those companies as to whether that credit subsidy is worth going forward with the loan. The advantage is that it does offer the companies the lower interest loans, but depending on the risk of the project, they have to pay for those subsidies.
My understanding is that the companies have the money laying there, and they're waiting on DOE to come back.
Well, I can get back to you on that.
I would think you would know right now.
Well, it's my understanding that that we were processing those loans. Now you're telling me that the loan projects are very, very complicated transactions, and many times we have a duty to the taxpayer as we negotiate these loans that to try to assess the probability that the loan might not be paid in time, that what are the assets of the company that can so the U.S. government can cover those. You also have the responsibility to spend the dollars the Congress appropriates and tells you to spend. You've got billions of dollars laying unused, and you've got companies who've put their money forward, very substantial, reliable companies that are not going to go broke, that's got money available and willing to do these projects now, and they're waiting on DOE. Can you help me get to the bottom of this? Yes, I can. But as I said, we also have to do it the other way, because if we